she was married off to some years back. Devastating pictures there online. But you're going to be speaking to someone, of course, on the same.
Yes, we will. So for those of you who aren't on social media, we, like John said, will bring that international focus. We'll be speaking to a human rights activist who is with her to tell us how Khadija is faring, what treatment she's been able to receive, and we will also be showing you some of those pictures of just what happened to this young bride. 2 crimes committed, if you ask me. She should never have been married in the first place at that age, and abuse of anyone underage or of age, unacceptable in this country, all the way in Mandera. So we'll be bringing you the details of that, as well as continue with our follow-up on plague for profit. So that is what we will be discussing in terms of compensation. Much like Khadija, whom we're talking about today, let's not forget there's the mothers, there's the children, there's the men and women of Owino Uhuru who still need compensation, who still need treatment, and who still need follow-up. And you will be having a discussion on that.
Most definitely. I've got an environmental lawyer as well as a program officer for corporate accountability from the Kenya Human Rights Commission, a commission that had pronounced itself on the case of those in Owino Uhuru following that story, to find out what exactly can one do if the government and other agencies that are supposed to act on their behalf don't. That discussion coming up after the break. That hashtag will be, of course, plague for profit. But we have other stories as we mentioned at the beginning of this bulletin. Here now are the highlights on KTN Weekend Prime.
Hakuna mwananchi atachomewa nyumba yake tena.
Mau evictions uproar. Government says evictions by fire will never happen again.
Nashukuru kwa huu msaada, ningempeleka hospitali ya private ingetoa pesa nyingi sana.
Doctor, cut my boy. Hundreds turn up for mass circumcision in Mombasa.
Niliambiwa hizo nini? Chemotherapy kisha ndio nitaanza. Radiotherapy yangu nilipatiwa baada ya miaka 3.
Kenyatta does not have equipment that is highly needed.
2-year wait for treatment. The real pain of KNH cancer patients.
And work versus family. Are you missing the best years of your children's growth?
Welcome to the program tonight. Our sign language interpreter is William Silla. We start tonight with harrowing details that are emerging of a case of a domestic abuse all the way in Mandera. The horrific pictures, most of which we cannot show you, tell the story of Khadija.
The underage 16-year-old wife allegedly burned by her husband in a fit of rage on the 7th of January this year. Her plight is only coming to light now because her husband allegedly proceeded to keep her hidden for 4 months, and when he couldn't hide her anymore, he called her mother to come for her.
We're now joined on phone by Uba Getty, who's a human rights activist and who is with Khadija now to give us more details on just what is going on. Uba, good evening. Thank you for joining us. Could you tell us what happened to Khadija?
Thank you very much. I am Uba Abdi, the chair lady Maendeleo Wanawake. I've been with this lady since Thursday. It's a sad story, very disappointing. This kid was burnt on her chest beyond recognition. And this is done by her husband, which we did not confirm the story yet. We could not speak to the lady because she is very much traumatized. Whenever you ask her a question, she cries. I happened to speak to the mother, who is also so much disappointed, and she said the kid was burnt by her husband, but she did not know the reason as to why he's done this inhuman act.
All right, Uba, let's talk about how we got to find out about what happened to Khadija. We understand this happened in January and he kept her hidden for 4 months. How did you come to know about this case?
The husband sent to her mother to come and pick her daughter, whom he could not hide anymore. When the mother picked her and she took her to Takaba Hospital, it was picked by an ambulance and she was referred to Mandera Referral Hospital from Takaba Hospital.
All right. What sort of treatment has she received so far?
So far, she's been assisted by the doctors at Mandera Hospital. The wound was cleaned and it was bandaged today, since Thursday. She's in a better condition compared to the way she was before when she arrived.
All right, and any attempts to apprehend the husband who's alleged to have committed this heinous crime?
Not yet.
Any assistance from the authorities? Are they saying anything? Are there any difficulties in getting this investigated, at least?
The OCPD and the county commissioner sent for investigative team. The CIDs were with us, and they are doing the investigation, and the investigation is going on as we speak.
All right. What more help does she require now? We understand you're attempting to airlift her to Nairobi for further treatment?
Yes. The county government is arranging for that, and they're lifting her to Nairobi.
Does she have any children?
No, she doesn't. She's newly married. She's only 1 year old.
Okay, only been married a year. Thank you very much. Yes. And thank you. We will continue to keep up to date with that. We've been speaking to Uba Gedi, who's from the Maendeleo ya Wanawake organization in Mandera County, talking to us about Hadija. Some of those pictures you've seen, some of them harrowing. We've tried to blur out as much as we can. And we will continue to keep you up to date with this horrific and foul crime that has taken place in the country. Most definitely, and the voice of the authorities down in Mandera is one that we'll seek to get, including the one of the governor as well as the county commissioner and the OCPD of the area. Very many allegations coming out about the alleged hiding of this crime, not just by the husband of Khadija, but by the community there and other religious leaders as well as the security agencies. We will be following up that story on Khadija. Now, the Kenyatta National Hospital management has revealed that due to a lack of equipment and overwhelming numbers of cancer patients, the earliest some cancer patients on the booking list will get access to radiotherapy is 2017. Shocking. But some cancer patients are now saying they are too sick to wait that long. Patrick Amimo shares the plight of the patients.
Phyllis Wangari has been battling breast cancer since 2013. That is when she lost one of her breasts to cancer. Phyllis is worried that she might lose the remaining breast to cancer if she's not treated soon.
Tumeuza kila kitu kwa boma. Tukafanya harambee ya kutosha. Mashinda kama hiyo ya pesa ninapitia.
Phyllis has made regular visits to Kenyatta National Hospital's cancer unit to secure radiotherapy treatment. The hospital has only 2 oncology machines for hundreds of desperate cancer patients queuing for treatment. Due to strained facilities and high demand, majority of the patients are forced to wait for up to 1 year to book the machines, and this is not even guaranteed.
Niliambiwa hizo chemotherapy zikisha ndio nitaanza radiotherapy, na radiotherapy yangu nilipatiwa baada ya miaka 3.
Brian Kombe is another cancer patient. He suffers from Hodgkin's lymphoma, a cancer that starts in white blood cells called lymphocytes. His only hope is Kenyatta National Hospital. This machine has been treating cancer patients at Kenyatta National Hospital for over 20 years, but it has broken down.
This was procured for us by the ministry through KEMSA.
Over 40,000 cancer patients are referred to Kenyatta each year. Currently, only one radiotherapy machine is operational after the other broke down. Consequently, the earliest opportunity some of the booked cancer patients will access the radiotherapy machine for treatment is 2017. Unfortunately, the 2-year wait will see some patients killed by cancer. For those lucky to survive, the disease will have spread to an advanced level, thus complicating treatment.
Wakawa wametuambia next booking itakuwa ni 2016 December ndio anaweza kupata slot ya yeye kufanyiwa radiotherapy. Jambo hili likatukalia zito.
Nimeumia kabisa, sina pesa, nimeenda kwa dieta mara 3. Hizo chemotherapy kila session 20,000 mara 12. Shinda nimepitia nyingi na vipimo vilikuwa ni vya hali ya juu. Unaweza kaenda ukapimwa na 5,000, unaweza ukapimwa na 8,000, unaweza ukatuma picha ya 10,000.
Kenyatta National Hospital plans to purchase at least 4 new cancer treatment machines to cope with the rising cases. 3 private hospitals have cancer treatment machines, but the cost is prohibitive, ranging between 5,000 to 10,000 shillings per session, a cost that is beyond reach for majority Kenyans like Phyllis and Brian. Patrick Amimo, KTN.
That's also a story that we're going to be following up in subsequent bulletins, given that the government had indeed purchased some of those radiotherapy machines. Now, moving on to another story in the Rift Valley, the government has announced that there will never be another incident of burning of houses during forceful eviction from forest settlement areas. Speaking in regard to the recent violent eviction of dwellers from the Olposimoru forest in a Mau catchment area, Deputy President William Ruto said today that a deal had been struck between government and local leaders to ensure that people are made to leave the forest in a humane manner. KTN's Rita Tinina with the latest on the Mau eviction saga.
Hakuna mwananchi atachomewa nyumba yake tena. Hakuna serikali itachoma nyumba ya mwananchi. Tutaweka mazungumzo, maelewano mpaka tukubaliane.
Houses go up in flames. Families contemplate their next move following the eviction of more than 1,000 families from the Olposimoru forest in the Mau complex.
Sasa sisi ndio wenyeji hapa na hapa ndio tulisaliwa. Hapa ndio nyumbani, hatuchui bahali nyingine.
Some of them paid 50,000 shillings from people that had been awarded previously the piece of land. So they know that this land belongs to them.
The evictions followed a 24-hour ultimatum by the Narok County Commissioner Arthur Osinya to the families to leave the forest. The evictions are only the latest in the long-running quest to stop encroachment and save the country's largest water tower.
Yale yameendelea kule Mau, tumeongea serikali ya county, viongozi wa mashinani, ma MCAs, opinion leaders, na tumekubaliana cutline mpya, na wananchi wenyewe wameondoka sehemu ambayo ni msitu, na hakuna hata mmoja nikizungumza na nyinyi mwananchi ambaye hapo msitu sasa.
Everybody agrees that Mau must be saved. Everyone agrees that settlements in that place is messing up the environment in this area, and no wonder we have flash floods, and no wonder that people are dying.
In 2003, hundreds were evicted from the Mau. In 2009, another forceful eviction was carried out with the promise of resettlement. 6 years later, the resettlement of the evictees remains a promise, and the government is at it again.
People need to be treated with dignity. People needed to have been told, informed, and given an alternative place where they can move into.
Wale walilipwa, wamelipwa, wale waliobakia wachache, tutawakamilishia. Ndio mambo ya balance, kuweka mizani kati ya mambo ya misitu na wananchi kupata makao, tuweze kuweka katika mizani ya sawasawa.
After a much touted Save the Mau campaign, which saw thousands evicted from the Mau complex in 2009, the government failed to keep settlers away from the forest.
There's not enough enforcement. People are evicted and the security forces remain there for a week, then they go away. And people know this, they know the security forces will go away. So they go back.
The manner in which settlers are evicted has always been controversial, but even those opposed to evictions agree that the forest needs to be safeguarded, and the government finds itself in a dilemma.
If you remove them, you must compensate them. If you compensate them, you don't have the money, you don't have the land. If you have the land, the local people don't want. So the government is caught.
Amnesty International Kenya, which has been pushing for the enactment of the Evictions and Resettlement Bill, is turning the heat on the government.
There's no policy around how people need to be moved and resettled and evicted.
We are doing what must be done. It is going to be smooth. It is going to be a win-win situation for everyone who is involved in this process.
All are agreed that the Mau complex should be safeguarded, but without consensus on the best way to save the country's most crucial water tower, the search for that perfect balance between conservation and human rights continues. Rita Tinina, KTN.
Now, evictions of settlers from the Mau forest has become a cyclic phenomenon in the country. With every eviction exercise comes heavy political undertones, and as KTN's senior political reporter Sam Ogina reports, the Mau catchment area has become a defining factor in Rift Valley politics.
The Mau forest eviction is a perennial fodder for political capital. Conservation of the country's largest water tower, always dwarfed by heavy political undercurrents, the focus being the next election.
Politicians are aware that if you throw these people out, you are losing votes. To ensure that the Mau is safe, we need a government which is willing to lose an election. If they're not willing, then we shall not solve it.
In 2009, former Prime Minister Raila Odinga was the fall guy in the politics of Mau. While he championed the eviction of Mau forest dwellers, Rift Valley leaders led by the then Agriculture Minister, presently the Deputy President William Ruto, rebelled against the directive.
Hawa wote walikuwa kwa bunge wakapiga kura. Hakuna mmoja ambaye alipinga. Ala baadaye wanatoka kule wanakwenda kupiga kifua. Raila nini? Hapana. Hiyo ni ngurumo ya chura.
Wale watoto waliotolewa Mau wanatoa machozi na kina mama wako barabarani. Hawa tunasema ati ni wahalifu. Ati machozi yao ni ya bandia. Hawa ni viongozi ambao hawafai hata kuongoza ng'ombe.
The Ruto-led rebellion pitted the former premier against the Rift Valley voting bloc. Politically, Raila, who harbored presidential ambitions, would go ahead to lose his support base in the region.
Kuna wale wanaosema ya kwamba hawa watu ama janga ambalo limewapata hawa watu ni la bandia, ni la unafiki. Ati machozi wanayotoa katika nyuso zao ni bandia. Ati hawa watu ni wahuni na ni wahalifu. Ole wao wanaojiita viongozi na kuwaita Wakenya walio katika janga la kibinadamu kama ile ya kwamba janga nyenyewe ati ni la bandia.
Ruto now finds himself in a peculiar position, championing a cause he had rejected some 6 years ago. Sitting as the Deputy President, he now sees sense in evicting those encroaching the water tower.
But the issue of conserving Mau and Mara Basin is not negotiable.
But now it is Ruto on the receiving end, suffering the backlash of shepherding the eviction.
Wakati huu ambao inanyesha, ambao ni baridi, mvua tele, watu wetu wametolewa in a very inhuman and brutal manner. It is totally unacceptable. We do not and will not accept in the manner that they've been treated.
When we stood on different sides on the manner in which conservation was done, many people misunderstood what we were saying. Conservation is not the same as eviction. There is a world of a difference between conservation and brutal eviction of citizens.
Just like in 2009, while Raila was the face of the eviction, as the president then, Mwai Kibaki, silently watched, Ruto faces rebellion from his community as President Uhuru Kenyatta remains tight-lipped as the politics of Mau replays itself. Samugina, KTN.
Let's go to Kwale County now. In a somber mood engulfed Mangakunyalo area of Matuga in that county during a mass burial for the 4 children who perished in a landslide at a quarry last evening. The kids were caught off guard when the sand shifted quickly and sucked them in, burying them in a water pan. Residents frantically dug out the sand, but only 1 child was saved. The authorities have blamed heavy rains that have been pounding the area, coupled by increased human activity at the quarry, for the tragedy. The deceased children were aged between 8 and 12 years, and 2 of them were from one family.
Na tumejaribu kutathmini, tukaona kwamba ile sehemu ni sehemu ambayo inachimbwa mchanga, na tumekubaliana kwa kauli moja kwamba hiyo timbo sasa imefungwa ili mambo ya usalama yaweze kudumishwa.
Let's stay within the coast region. Hundreds of parents turned up at Utange area in Mombasa to take advantage of a free circumcision drive under the auspices of a team of volunteering doctors. The two-day event, which ended today, saw over 500 children, mostly below the age of 6, take the cut. KTN's coast reporter Francis Ontomwa now reports.
Mishi Samuel patiently moves from one chair to another. Although she learned this just today, she quickly made up her mind. She joins hundreds of parents under this scorching sun to bring her 1.5-year-old son for circumcision.
Nimeleta mtoto wangu kwa msaada huu. Mtoto wangu ana mwaka mmoja na miezi 6. Nashukuru kwa huu msaada. Ningempeleka hospitali ya private ningetoa pesa nyingi sana. Lakini nashukuru kwa huu msaada. Mungu awabariki, mtoto wangu ametengenezwa vizuri.
It starts with a simple registration. Then in this room follows the main procedure. Doctors under the banner Doctors Worldwide have teamed up with the local church to offer this service. On average, it takes Mishi's son just 10 minutes to finish the exercise. Traditionally, the community here will circumcise children at an advanced age, but today, this bothers not Mishi.
Umri wake kwa sawa kulingana na umri wake.
This exercise started a few hours ago and the numbers keep increasing by the minute. Right behind me is the symbolic passage from childhood to manhood.
We witness the small boys undergo the painful process, each emerging, tears rolling. And in the scheme of things, the old-age conviction that circumcision should harden the boys appears to have just been overtaken with time. Medics are keener on other details.
For us as medics, it's actually for health reasons. Yeah, first of all, it's a reproductive health procedure. Then also it is also in the campaigns against the spread of HIV/AIDS.
According to the facilitators, the exercise that started yesterday has so far proven a success, with about 500 already attended to.
Tumegundua kwamba huku watu wengi hawana uwezo wa kwenda kulipa fedha, hasa hizi private clinics. Na kwa sababu hawana uwezo, tulipokuwa tumepata mipango kwamba kuna watu wanaweza kuja na wakasaidia kijiji, nikaona ni vizuri tuzungumze nao waje watusaidie.
Circumcision is widely practiced by many African communities for mainly family, religious and cultural reasons. Mama Purity Kenga has brought 2 of her sons to be part of this.
Nilisikia kwa hapa kuna madaktari ambao wanasaidia watoto kwa tahiri. Ndio nikaonelea heri ni waleta hawa nangu kwa sababu ni msaada mkubwa sana kusaidia watoto wawili kutahiriwa.
Medically, the process has been said to significantly reduce chances of getting sexually transmissible infections. However, if not conducted properly, circumcision could also lead to serious health complications. Francis Ontomwa, KTN, Mombasa.
Now, labor is a great source from which nearly all human comforts and necessities are drawn, goes a great saying. But has working in Kenya turned from comfort to family isolation? In other words, is your work robbing you of the best years in the growth of your children and marriage? To understand that elusive balance between work and family, take a look at the following report.
For most employees in the country, the 1st of May not only marks a holiday in which one does not go to work, it more often than not signifies a time one spends with the family outside the busy work schedule. But for the ordinary Kenyan worker, can there really be a balance between work and family? Sole entrepreneur Mercy McKenna says yes, but only if you are your own boss.
It has given me flexibility. At times I see at times there is call, maybe to go home, it's an emergency. I don't look back and say that I have to sit and wait. I just walk out and call that take over, run things. I am going, but I'll be coming back or I won't be coming back.
Having started her own boutique more than 10 years ago, McKenna says she has more time for her family as compared to her husband who is under formal employment.
Most of the time I realize I am the one doing most of the emergencies, most of the parents meeting, most of the homework I do with the kids, because you'll get home when they are already asleep.
For the average Kenyan worker, be it self-employed or employed by an individual or an organization, there's usually a fine line to draw between work-related activities and social life. But for Mercy McKenna, who owns this boutique, she says that line is easier to draw when you're self-employed. McKenna insists that having her own time schedule allows her not to miss important stages in the growth of her 3 children back at home. But what of those who don't have their own businesses? Where does one find time for the family under formal employment?
5:30, you go back again at around 9:30. Kids are already tired, they're asleep, so you don't have time for your kids.
Watu wanaweza kufanya kama na shift so that ukifanya for a certain maximum time of hours you are released, then somebody else ana take over.
Utatafuta na uangalie saa zile unaweza rudi kwa watoto wako as a parent, uwapatie parenting that love of a parent, because usipowapatia watoto wana give up, wanaona they don't have TV, ndio itakuwa parent yao.
Human resource specialist Goreti Kimani says that employers need to step in to create family time for their employees, but the employees mustn't demand it.
But the moment you take up a job and you sign a contract of employment, then you have actually given your skills and time to somebody else for a pay. And therefore, you actually relinquish your freedom.
With the majority of Kenyan graduates unemployed, Goreti says employers seem to look for those who are willing to work for longer hours.
There is no employer who is going to mistreat an asset, if I use the word mistreat. Somebody who is an asset will be around time off whenever they need. There's a wedding for a friend, you will go for that wedding, because they know when you come in there, you're productive.
The consultant, however, insists that availability of an individual to their family is more of a personal choice rather than the nature of the job, be it self or formal employment. For the average Kenyan laborer, between 8 to 14 hours are spent at the workstation a day, time that is often consumed at the expense of either leisure or social life. For sole proprietors like McKenna, having her own business gives her more time to balance work and family. For those who are employed, determining when to spend free time is crucial. Either way, both work and family cannot be ignored in totality. Timothy Otieno, KTN.
Now, it is our sincere hope tonight that our boss was watching that piece and we'll take it to heart. Take it very seriously.
Most definitely.
We need time to spend with our family. Yes, there you go. Yeah, until it comes to the paycheck at the end of the month. Then you'll know who's the boss. Anyhow, we're taking a short break right now on KTN Weekend Prime. Let's hope I'll still be here tomorrow and I'll have a job. And we want to talk about Plate for Profit. Let's move on to some serious matters.
Oh yeah, most definitely. That story, of course, eliciting lots of reactions, including from the human rights circles. But I guess the question that a lot of people have been asking is, what next? How can the people in Owino Uhuru get justice? And not just the people of Owino Uhuru, because there are many cases like that.
Right.
What is the status of public interest litigation in this country?
Absolutely.
We'll explain that. We've got two people who know quite a bit about that joining us right after this break on KTN Weekend Prime. Welcome back to KTN Weekend Prime. And on the other Kenya, discussion that has been going since the investigative report for Taria Sumu and Plague for Profit ran on Sunday and Monday this past week, profiling and exposing what was happening in Owino Uhuru in Changamwe area of Mombasa. Very, very sad scenes coming out of there, some that I of course saw myself, and the burden in terms of health that has been left with the community there, and the lack of accountability, more so of people who were indeed responsible for the setting up of that factory, the running of the factory, not just the owners but of course at government level. And tonight I have with me two ladies who are going to help me discuss what next, the next steps with regard to justice, seeking justice not just for the people in Owino Uhuru but for other communities and other populations that may be facing the same kinds of threat. I'll just start right at the extreme end there. I've got Grace Chalagat. She's an environmental lawyer as well as a registered, we just found this out right before the break, a registered environmental impact assessor. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. And right next to me is Sylvia Kithinji. She's a program officer for KHRC dealing with corporate accountability. Right down your alley. And I'll start here with you. Where does the buck stop with respect to the people in Owino who should be held accountable? What measures need to be taken?
Thank you, Alan, for having me on the show. There are a number of human rights violations that occurred. It may appear that it was mainly an environmental issue, but we saw issues of labor-related cases, issues of child rights, issues of course, the right to clean and healthy environment, and so on. Well, in as much as there has been a lot of conversation about the government's interventions in this respect, but we must not forget that the perpetrators of these violations were actually officials of a corporate entity. Yeah. So what happens to these officials of this corporate entity and the corporate entity itself? Does it go scot-free? That would not be acceptable. I mean, over the last few decades, the discourse around business and human rights has been growing. Yeah. We have seen the UN Human Rights Council adapting the UN guiding principles on business and human rights and stating that corporates have a responsibility to respect human rights. And by this, they mean prior to setting up operations, they need to conduct a human rights impact assessment. Right. And in the event of infringing of any of these rights, they need to take steps to redress these violations. And this is something that we need to start seeing in developing countries, because that's where, like Kenya, that's where this human rights impact are felt the most. Most definitely. Right. Polluter pays principle is something that doesn't seem to have happened here, Grace. Lots of evidence that the environment in Owino Uhuru, in Jomvu, remains polluted today, but the key owners of this factory were people who are not nationals of Kenya, at least some of them. But there also is, of course, Nyali Member of Parliament Hezron Awiti Bolo, who at one point served as the executive chairman. In using the polluter pays principle, how then should people like these be pursued?
The polluter pays principle is a principle that was born in international environmental law, and that means there's a lot of dialogue that went to it, because it originated mostly in marine pollution. Marine pollution, where these ships would pollute maybe in oil in the international seas. And it would actually be quite difficult to peg upon whose jurisdiction, upon who should do the cleanup. In our MCA, that is the Environmental Management and Coordination Act, we are told that the polluter pays principle is actually the person who pollutes is supposed to be liable for the cleanup. That is the cleanup of all the environmental, the media, and also the beneficial use that is lost. The beneficial use that is lost maybe is agricultural. If you are pastoralist, this person who did that action should be able to be put to book and to restore. And that is why we have the restoration order.
But there's also a health burden that has been left with the residents there. Does that polluter pays principle cover that, or should we look at other areas in the law and speak specifically to the kind of remedies that need to be taken?
The remedies that could be taken are vast. We can approach it from a human rights perspective, because we know the right to a clean and healthy environment that is secured under our section, is the Article 42 of the Constitution, is actually born and strengthened from the right to life, so that we cannot say that we are going to have life without a clean environment. That is it's an absurdity of sorts, and we want to say that these people have a right to be compensated, and that is secured even in the Constitution under Article 23, where the High Court can say that these people are victims, and for that they should be compensated. Even 70, or the enforcement of the environmental rights. So they do have rights, and these rights are not only on paper, that these rights are going to work on the ground, and these people are going to be brought back to the dignity, because that's the reason why we have human rights. Human rights is for the fortification of the dignity of the people. That's the most important thing, because their humanity cries out to us. I remember sitting down in the sitting room looking at that lady whose child had just she was saying that he was really in a dire state, and that really touched me. Why? Because we are all equal under the law, under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights.
Yeah, most definitely. And let's just get back to you, Sylvia. Much as businesses are responsible for the kinds of pollutants that they emit and the environment that they have been charged with to look after as they conduct their businesses, the standards of health, for instance, are set by the Ministry of Health. No word from the Ministry of Health with respect to this and many other cases. What level of culpability do they have as the people who set the standards for health in Kenya?
I absolutely agree. The primary obligation of promoting and fulfilling and protecting human rights falls on the state and state agencies. That means that if there was any complacency on the part of the Ministry of Health or public health officials in conducting investigations, or in the first place actually issuing a go-ahead for the factory to operate without ensuring that structures and systems are put in place to mitigate such issues, then there is a problem, and this problem needs to address through a number of ways of seeking remedy, including judicial action.
Yeah. Now, speaking of judicial action, there have been no representatives for the people of Owino who in court and taking this forward in a judicial manner. Does it stop at that because they do not have representation of lawyers and that sort of thing? Is that where it ends for these people?
No, it shouldn't be where it ends. I mean, this is a matter of public interest litigation. The moment infringement of human rights occur, it means that it stops being an individual matter or a private matter. And in terms of upholding the Bill of Rights, anyone can represent these communities to ensure that justice is done. Exactly.
All right. Speaking of which, Grace, in terms of the history of public interest litigation in this country, do we have a strong history, given the fact that the Constitution changed, of course, 5 years ago and introduced certain laws and rights that lend themselves to public interest litigation? What's the history with respect to that? Do we have a strong history in that over these 5 years?
Over the 5 years, I would comment that we as the legal fraternity, I believe, have not yet maximized and really unpackaged the full the full gifts that we've been given with this new constitution, because at times we're lax and we overly concentrate on the civic and the political rights, you know. But this voter will not be able to get to the polling station if they don't have clean water, if they cannot have air of good quality. So I think we as the fraternity need to pull up our socks to help these people, for in the end this constitution is made for their good, and they are where the sovereign power of the people, it lies with the people. Yes. And the history of Kenya with public interest litigation, going back up to the Wangari Maathai case with the Kenya Media Trust Tower, they used to throw out cases just because of procedural technicalities and say, you know, you don't have a locus standi, you're just a busybody. And that common law principle had really plagued the legal ongoings and human rights sector until the constitution was passed. So I think we have so much to do to be able to actualize that. Yes.
All right, Sylvia, one counter argument that I've heard in various circles is that yes, we do have a very strong Bill of Rights in this country, but we are an emerging economy, and some of these rights have to be attained progressively. Is the right to health one of those rights that you have, that we should sit back and wait for the government to be able to put in all the infrastructure necessary for everybody in this country to enjoy that right? Is it a right that can be attained progressively?
Yes, but in these circumstances you realize that it was the opposite, in the sense that it was an infringement of that right. A community was living, and a corporation set up and did their business activities led to violation of that particular right, and they did not address that issue. So outside of the government's obligation to progressively realize the right to health, we're seeing here that something happened, and this something actually violated the right to health of children, of women, of men, of
if
the
I
elderly.
support her, the government under the Bill of Rights, it said that when a right that we say that has not yet been fully progressively realized, it has an obligation to say this is how much money we have in the budget, and according to this much money that we have been given, this is the best that we could do. Can they actually say that with this allocation, budgetary allocation we've been given? So we still have a recourse to go to court and say that truly they could do better. And there's a case in point where the Indian government was put to task why the Indian people were dying of hunger, yet in another county other people were having excess of food. So the government can always be taken to task to say that with this money that you have, are you doing the best you can? And that is where we need to move at, that we need to hold this government accountable, and all future governments, because in the end this is our taxpayers' money, and without accountability nothing much can be done.
Let's stay on that point for a moment. We had a story that ran in the first section of the news with respect to the rights to health. 2-year wait for cancer patients to have access to radiotherapy treatment. Yet months ago, President Uhuru Kenyatta, the Deputy President, as well as a number of members of government were launching, or rather had just announced 38 billion shillings worth of equipment, radiotherapy equipment and other equipment that's supposed to diagnose these kinds of diseases, going out to the counties. Is that a potential area where using the right to health, a person who is suffering from cancer can go to court and seek treatment?
Yes, and it doesn't have to be the person suffering from cancer. It can be you, it can be me, because all of us are affected by this, and it all ends up to be an environmental matter, because the depletion of the ozone layer leads to more UV rays coming in, and you find cancers that were never there before emerging, and you're wondering what is happening. But it's because we have not strictly enforced our environmental rights. We have so many good things in our laws, so many good policies, but they just gather dust. Yeah.
All right. We'll just get back to that in a moment. Very interesting discussion, of course, about the attainment of rights with respect to public interest litigation. We have to take a short break right now on KTN Weekend Prime. The discussion, of course, leading off of that investigation, Plague for Profit and Futari Asumu. When we come back, we will be discussing how the level of evidence that was uncovered, of course, by this investigation, whether it's enough to bring to book the people responsible, not just for opening the factory, but also the people in government. Stay with us on KTN Weekend Prime. Welcome back to the Other Kenya on KTN Weekend Prime. Of course, the discussion, the hashtag, of course, is hashtag Plague for Profit, discussing what next for the people of Owino Uhuru, but also what next for the people, the citizens of this country that may require representation in public interest litigation cases. I have with me, if you're just joining us from the break, I have with me two guests. I have Grace as well as Sylvia, both of them lawyers, and both of them involved in this with respect to public interest litigation. And before we went to the break, we were discussing those issues. Let me just read some of your feedback here. Diwa Kenya says, whereas realization of economic and social rights is progressive, the government must by now show steps on how to realize them. But there was an interesting one here that I want you, Sylvia, to respond to, or as well as Grace. We need a no-win, no-fees lawyers in Kenya, and government legal aid for the poor. I'll start with you. Do you think that is something that can happen in this country?
I think it can happen, and legal aid is already there in Kenya. In fact, there's a legal aid bill, but it has not yet come out from the ground, because most of the time legal aid is mostly provided in form of pauper briefs, that is in the civil procedure, or pauper, or maybe in criminal issues like murder, but we don't have environmental or human rights legal aid per se.
All right. And where is the role of human rights organizations like the KHRC in providing this kind of legal aid? I know your mandates are diverse, but is there something that you can rally around, given that it's such there's such a huge need for it in Kenya?
Yes, definitely. The Kenya Human Rights Commission does have a legal aid program and a public interest litigation program as well, which falls under the legal aid program. And while you'll find that in as much as organizations like KHRC undertake this sort of mandate, undertaking public interest litigation with respect to human rights issues, we still need structured legal aid program of sorts that sits in the office of the Attorney General, something that's available to the entire public, because a single organization, say for instance like Kenya Human Rights Commission, may not be able to handle the kind of volume in terms of legal aid and also public interest litigation.
And probably doesn't even have the budget for it.
Exactly.
Now let's go back to Owino Uhuru. The evidence that was uncovered, for instance, blood tests that show that lead levels in the children, the men and the women, they are naturally high. Lead levels in the soil are high. Animals, children, women and men are suffering, and some have died from the effects of lead poisoning. Is that a good enough basis for you to take to court a public interest litigation case on behalf of those citizens?
Definitely. I mean, the feature plague for profits already unearths a lot of evidence which can be used in public interest litigation. But my view would be that we need to ask the victims what it is that they want and sit down and figure out what would be the best strategy to achieve what they want. So in the if it's compensation that they need, and of course there are other obligations, for instance rehabilitation of the families that live there, treatment which needs to be done extremely urgently. In my opinion, evacuation as well, because they're still exposed to lead poisoning. I mean, the more they stay there, the more vulnerable they become, and these are things that we need to do as soon as possible. So does public interest litigation, will it give them that remedy? So it is, I think the best way to handle it would be to have an array of strategies that would give them what is more important, and keeping in mind that time is of essence. Of course, public interest litigation is one of the main ways that they can achieve remedy or access to remedy, but there are other ways that they can also achieve some of these remedies. And also we must, I think I'll keep repeating that we need to keep in mind that we cannot let this go. Officials of this company are in India.
There also are some officials here in Kenya.
Exactly. And the company was registered in India. We have to keep in mind that the Indian government also has an obligation to play. We have seen the growth of jurisprudence around extraterritorial obligations, which means that if a Kenyan company commits human rights violations in Rwanda or Burundi, then the Kenyan government must do everything it can to assist in investigations, provide access to remedy, etc. So in terms of especially punitive actions against these corporate actors, we need to see how we can go beyond our borders and try and
one of those remedies, of course, would be mutual legal assistance between Kenya and India. Looking back at the Anglo leasing cases, for instance, that's not a very easy path to walk down with respect to getting citizens of a foreign country to come and stand trial here, or to be able to gather enough evidence for them to stand trial in their home countries. Grace, tell me, what what needs to happen with respect to getting those people? I mean, Sylvia touched on it a little bit, but what needs to happen right now to get the people who are responsible for the opening and operating of that factory, those Indian citizens, to be able to stand trial or face justice for the pollution that took place in Owino Uhuru?
Extradition. I mean, you make an application, and through the reciprocal court, that these people have committed a crime in our jurisdiction, and because of the respect of the states, you know, we are all equal. They should be able to respect us, and they should bring these people to book. And there's something that she touched on that I wanted to build on. That right now we are moving away from just giving corporates fines. These people have money. They will be able to cut down from their earning and their profits and pay out, and actually pass on that increase to the consumers. We now want to get the directors, the managers. We want to put them behind bars, incarceration. That's the only way they feel it. In China, this it's already in their statute law that whoever has committed the directing mind and will of the company. That's why we say the mens rea. You know, in any crime, there's the actus reus. That is the act that you do, and the mens rea, the mental, the aforethought that you have before you commit a crime. That this is with the directors of the company, that they should go to jail, because corporate time is very precious.
Yeah.
You know, and such people can't bear being anywhere behind bars, because
but here's a question though. Even with respect to some of the environmental laws in terms of standards, there are very many gaps in our laws. Do we have the appropriate statutes to be able to see corporate directors, executive chairmen of companies such as these stand trial and face jail time? What laws would we use? Let's use the case of Owino Uhuru, because that at least has been a focus, for instance. Grace, maybe you can respond to that.
That is actually under MCA, that's the Environmental Management and Coordination Act. It does provide that for companies, the lifting of the corporate veil in company law, that we are going to lift the corporate veil and find out who are these people who are actually the directing mind, or even who are the real owners of these companies, and put them to book. It's already there. It's just a matter of us implementing it and bringing it out, because in the end of the day, there has to be someone who signed a document to deposit that hazardous or what we call toxic waste, the lead, the heavy metal poisoning. And these people, it's not like they didn't know, because after an environmental impact assessment study is done by the proponent, if it was anybody who was a reliable expert, I've told them this is it, you know. And with your integrity, I think at times Kenyans, it just boils down to your own integrity. Are you willing to tell the project proponent, this project, yes, I've done it, but I don't see it being profitable to the environment? Because under Article 69 of the Constitution, it says to eliminate all processes or activities that are harmful to the environment. So it's not a matter of going back 2 years and saying, oh, now we see it wasn't really good, let's shut it down.
Yeah.
It should have been shut down from the beginning.
Right from the start.
Right from the start.
Final comment, Sylvia. Given the fact that this factory opened in 2007, the environmental impact assessment didn't seem to have the impact that it was supposed to have in the running of this factory and the pollution that happened thereafter, and the situation that we are in now, there has been no justice that has taken place or that has been served on behalf of the people of Owino Uhuru. If this situation continues, whose burden will it be? Because we can say that, fine, the polluters are responsible. We can say that the government agents are responsible. But if no action takes place, now that everybody knows that there was a problem there, whose ultimate responsibility should this be?
It should ultimately be the government's responsibility. They have the primary obligation, and our constitution says so, that they have the primary obligation to promote, protect, and fulfill human rights. And that's why state agencies were mandated anyway to undertake some of these checks and investigations. Yeah. And therefore, due to that failure, the government is in breach of human rights violations. Is in breach of human rights, and therefore they need to take steps to address this issue.
All right. Sylvia Kithenji, a program officer at the Kenya Human Rights Commission, as well as Grace Chalangat, environmental lawyer. lawyer. Thank you very much for joining us on an issue that has been very important to us this past week and hopefully important to the Kenyan public. The suffering of the people at Owino Uhuru, as well as the suffering of many other communities that live on the front lines of environmental damage and other crimes that could see them take the law that as has been written into their hands and initiate public litigation against the people who may be responsible for these kinds of things. There is a point, of course, to these discussions and to the story that we've been following up throughout this week. Yvonne, what is that point?
Here's the point. First, the buck must stop somewhere with someone. Someone has got to take responsibility for what happened in Owino Uhuru, public health officials, NEMA, and it is interesting to note that to date, other than Hezron Awiti-Bolo, who's the MP at the center of this saga, and NEMA, the parent ministry, that's the Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources, has not officially responded to this. We have not heard anything from any other government agency other than NEMA. And as Sylvia Kithinji said there, she said the primary obligation of protecting human rights remains with the state, and judicial action is one of the remedies that can be sought. And definitely talking about lifting the corporate veil, understanding who are the people behind this company. We have managed to do that. Incontrovertible evidence on Plague for Profit as to just who is behind that company. Now the question is, who is going to take action? Who is going to ensure that this never happens again? As you recall, KTN reported just earlier this week of another factory that was shut down by NEMA for emitting poisonous gases into the air. So this is not an isolated incident of just what's happening in Owino Uhuru. Who knows? Next, a factory with dangerous effluents could be coming to a town or neighborhood near you, and that is why justice must be sought. And like our guest said on the panel earlier, fines alone are not enough. People need to go behind bars for this to be deterrent. And finally, and the point tonight, is the right to health, just like the right to life, is not progressive. You cannot have the right to health without the right to life. We'll continue to follow up on this story until justice for the residents of Owino Uhuru is found. That, tonight, is the point.
An action-packed and sporty day. It has been a very good evening and welcome to today's edition of KTN Sports. My name is Moses Wahisi. Starting us off, former Kenyan Premier League champions Tusker FC dented Father Nakuru All-Stars season by beating them 3-1. Jesse Were netted a brace in a match that took the Brewers to the second position on the log, 5 points behind leaders and defending champions of Gor Mahia. Also on a winning spree, Gor Mahia won their fixture 2-0 against Ulinzi Stars.
Tusker FC are now showing signs of recovery from their slow start to the 2015 season. And it did not take long before they stamped the authority, and it was Jesse Were who put the Brewers in the lead. Clifford Alwanga added the second before Were completed his brace. Boniface Akenga pulled one back for the All-Stars, who could not produce any threat to the Brewers.
When you get 3 points every game, I think we are more than satisfied.
Referee angekuwa tu fair enough balance vitu, ndio tunaongelea mambo ya draw hapa.
Tomatoes Rugby. Kenya Commercial Bank lifted the Kakamega Rugby 10-a-side tournament after beating Strathmore University 3-0. The final match was played on a slippery ground following the heavy rainpour that almost rendered the Kakamega High School pitch unplayable. In the semi-finals, Strathmore edged out Homeboys 3-0, while KCB pipped Kabras Sugar 5-0. Speaking on the sidelines of the tournament, the Kenya Rugby Union chairman Omwela said that the union is yet to find a replacement to the Safaricom, which pulled out their sponsorship.
We made a recommendation to the affiliates that once we receive the report from the auditors, we will
follow it to the letter, and we've done exactly that. In terms of replacement, it's very hard to replace Safaricom. Safaricom is the largest company in this country.
The Labor Day Junior Tennis Tournament entered day 2 with a host of youngsters recording mixed results heading into the finals tomorrow. Elsewhere in hockey, Western Jaguars edged Mvita in one of the league matches that was played at the City Park.
Mombasa-based Mvita hosted newly promoted Western Jaguars at the City Park Stadium, and the Jaguars were quick to close their opponents as Ken Ashimosi sounded the boards fast before Farah Khan leveled. Jaguars were however undone as Amos Kibich put his team back on the lead minutes before Sami Webo leveled matters for Mvita through a penalty. Kibich's strike in dying minutes of the match proved decisive as he scored the winning goal of the tie.
We have some technicalities here and there. Our opponents were better, but at least we managed to contain them.
It has worked for us, but it's only some half chances they got, they utilized for their team. Our opponents utilized the half chances they got, and then they got the 3 points.
In other matches of the day, defending champions Butali Sugar emerged 3-0 winners over Park Road at the same venue. In tennis, Sugai Luka defeated Zihil Shah in sets of 4-1 and 4-1 in one of the Junior Boys Labor Day tournament at the Nairobi club. Jaden Mitchell emerged victorious over Brandon Sagala in sets of 4-2 and 4-0. In the girls category, Alisa Thaka defeated Julia Kangati 4-0-4-0, while Rosa Asumu overpowered Abigail Lucas with a 4-0-4-1 win. The finals of the tournament will be staged tomorrow at the same venue. Robinson Okenye, KTN Sports.
And from that mega fight, a majority of the people here in the country and also throughout the world have expressed support for their favorite boxers. And Kenyans have not been left out too. We sought out to find out Kenyans whom they think that will win that bout.
Me, I'll go with Pacquiao.
Why Pacquiao?
First of all, I like Pacquiao because of the humility. And second of all, is Pacquiao is a better puncher than Mayweather.
Kusema kweli, Mayweather for today, akichapa Pacquiao ataka make history. Kwake ataka make history by then. Na Pacquiao anataka make my fans happy.
Mayweather, he's just too arrogant. He doesn't deserve it. Yeah, so I'm with the money.
He has the best defense ever for world boxing. No one has ever defended like Mayweather, and unajua Pacquiao ni mse fast, ata waste energy yake first 5 rounds. Knockout hapo ya Mayweather, the man down.
Atatake opportunity kumdelay juu ni msa kuchoka. Round ya pili ya tatu atampiga kake hiyo. So mido yangu hata sasa ni shabet 2,000. Mayweather ashinde hii kitu. Yenye asiposhinda pia mimi sishindi.
Different opinions there. Now, 43 cars will start the third leg of the KCB Kajero Rally tomorrow in Kitengela town. After hours of confusion following Friday's failed record due to impassable routes, organizers and the sponsors finally decided to run the event tomorrow. The reigning African Rally champion leader Jasprit Chat is among those who will start the rally. The first competitive stage is a 25-kilometer run from Isinya through Konza. The rifle range will provide the second competitive stage.
I don't know. This one will come in power.
And with that, we wrap up our today's edition of KTN Sports. But do remember, today is the Russia night. Another reason for you to keep it KTN. My name is Moses Wahisi. Enjoy your night.
Okay, so it's that time of the show when we take a look at your feedback tonight. Roland Ibole on Twitter says, do policies, guidelines or laws apply to all companies or only to certain types of companies? The hashtag uses played for profit.
All right, Leon Raburu says, the essence of an EIA, that's an environmental impact assessment, is to forecast expected impacts, to halt, re-strategize or approve, evaluate and monitor a project. There was an EIA that was done on that factory, one of which approved. There have been several actually.
Yes, and
one of which approved,
clean bill of health?
Gave a clean bill of health, and 8 years down the line we see the consequences.
Here we are, and this is a question, just to ask in direct. Has anyone from the Ministry of Environment, Water, Natural Resources contacted you?
Nope.
CID?
Nope.
Government?
Apart from NEMA, nope.
Police?
No.
Okay.
That is the state of the nation this evening.
That is where we are. And you know what I'd like to say, because it's not just this one. Even with Kanyari, the church is open. The church continues. It was never shut down, not even for an hour, for investigations to be done. And this continues to be the state of the nation here. Exposés. Listen, the media can only do so much. We cannot be judge, jury, and executioner. We do not even have those powers. But that, for me, is what is a slap in the face for the residents of Owino Uhuru. If nobody is responding, what? We keep making noise and we'll forget about it? Not this one.
Yeah, and it's so unfortunate. If you were down there with us, Yvonne, the level of hopelessness there is really palpable, and it's very unfortunate that in this day and age, Bhopal happened, there was Kumamoto in Japan, all of these different examples of what can happen with lead poisoning in our history books for everybody to see, and yet in this day and age something like this can continue to happen, and 8 years after this, nothing happens. No action from the government. I think I'll just leave it there. Because if I go...
I know. And for me, what that means is what's to stop the next person from doing the same, if not worse, if all the time we highlight these issues and the government does nothing. Like we said, the buck must stop somewhere, and today it must stop with the government. It is the government's responsibility to ensure that human rights of every individual on Kenyan soil is upheld and maintained for the dignity of life. That's where we leave it at for now. Good night. My name is Yvonne Okwara-Matole. We'll see you tomorrow.
My name is John Alanamu. Look forward to Checkpoint. The promo's been running quite a controversial debate there. Always a controversial one. The gay rights debate after that ruling to license an LGBTI NGO in the country. Yvonne's going to be steering the ship on that one. I'll just be looking, listening. So good night. My name is John Alanamu. Have a good evening.